Welcome back to Doug's Den. Very special guest today. Actor and comedian Matt McCarthy. You know him from the College Humor skit, Bad Man, No Jeggings, Nicolas Cage's Agent. Recently, he's been on Corporate on Comedy Central, How We Roll on CBS. Welcome to the show, Matt McCarthy.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I think everyone who's seen the other guys knows that line.
Biracial angel.
Yeah, and that's just it's 2 seconds, but it's amazing.
I appreciate it. I improvised that line actually because
Really?
my line was supposed to be because you shot Derek Jeter, and I don't know, I was in my head. I was just nervous, and I kept saying it weird. I can't explain it, and I kept hearing myself say, like, why are you saying it this way? And I did it a couple of times, and then Adam McKay, the director, asked Bobby Cannavale to give it a try. He did it once, and that's the take that's in the movie, him screaming because you shot Derek Jeter. And then in that moment I was like, oh man, if we go again, I got to think of something to say because I'm gonna get cut out of this movie. And then I improvised the line because he's a biracial angel, and saved my job that day.
I'm the collector here at Barstool, and I saw a TikTok where you're showing off some old VHS tapes, and then you pan the room that is a full room in your house dedicated to media. That's a crazy collection.
Thank you. I take that compliment.
Yes.
Yeah, this is a big wrestling fan, big pro wrestling fan. I wrote for WWE for a couple of years. And I have a wrestling podcast, the We Watch Wrestling podcast. But so this is often, it started as a closet. I've had the collection my whole life, but I started referring to that closet in LA as the Arena McSee archives.
Nice.
And it has now expanded into this office, the spare room we have in our house. So yes, this is the nerve center, the heart and soul of the Arena McSee archives. And somebody gave me the nickname the king of all physical media, and I wear that one proudly. Recently I have seen the VHS collecting community blossoming, or at least outing themselves more on social media. And I think for people of a certain age, there's a nostalgia factor to it. Whereas for me, it's just always been the thing I've collected. But once I got into the DVD era, that's when VHS were at their cheapest.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you're buying from people of a certain age, older than me, I'm 42, their perception is that VHS is still this dead medium, which it is, but that it's valueless.
There's nobody that wants it.
No one wants this. And I mean, I just bought, you think my collection is something? I discovered this guy, Marvin of the Movies. And you can Google that name and you can read his obituary. He's since passed away. And then there's one that I know of, one video, almost like a 6-minute documentary of his collection. And this is a guy who bought a VCR in the 70s and just started taping everything and collecting everything he could, to the point, and was here in LA, to the point where he was a resource for people in the movie industry. You know, he had a lot of lost. I think Martin Scorsese has a quote about like probably 50%. I'm pulling this stat out of my rear end, but of the movies made before 1950 are lost forever, or presumed lost.
Yeah.
And this guy Marvin of the Movies was a resource for, and particularly a lot of silent films, serials, things that he got his hands on, got copies of, or even like commercial tapes that it was just like, no one else has this anymore. His son was, and it probably is still, selling tapes from his deceased father's storage unit right here in beautiful scenic downtown Van Nuys, California. And I bought 2 boxes, just random boxes.
I have no idea what's on them.
No, I've sifted through the boxes just looking at labels. One porno tape,
Of course. Of
of
course.
course. Um, one box even had. I haven't watched it, but the label has. It says it's the Pammy, the Pamela Anderson, Tommy Lee tape,
That might be the
which
original tape.
he might have the original one. You're absolutely right. Um, and everything that's old is new again, and that's a limited series based on that. God bless them all. But I was talking to his son. He's like, "What are you interested in?" Because he kept most of the commercially released VHS tapes, and I was like, honestly, I'm most interested in things that are taped off TV, any tapes that your father might have made. And so this is a long way of me getting to him saying, "Gosh, I didn't realize that there was any interest in stuff taped off TV." He's like, "I threw away about 500 tapes in a dumpster," and I was just like truly felt for about 3 seconds devastated of
Yeah.
just like
What if?
what's
Yeah.
lost forever now. Because I mean that's the thing that really, you know, that those one of a kind tapes, things taped off TV, and particularly with the commercials, and you get the news breaks, and very quickly now with, Google, I can pretty well narrow down the exact date that these things were taped and what was going on in the world. And it's fascinating. It really is as close that I could see into time traveling. There is just like you can peek into what was happening right then and there that day in that city, particularly if it's like localized television. But again, I mean, so in that respect, there is a certain nostalgia aspect. But since I was a kid, I've just always enjoyed the idea of taping something, having something, holding it in my hand, and being like, we can watch this anytime we want.
Yeah.
And it's different than something that's floating around on the internet because there's nothing
Tangible.
tac yeah, there's nothing tactile to it. There's no sense of ownership.
Hmm.
And particularly now with these streamers, we are getting more and more, every so often you see an article or a Reddit post about like, well, Disney changed this about this movie, or WWE cut this out of a match, or all these things that it's just it's truly is Orwellian in a sense, because it's just you're changing, you're trying to alter history,
Hmm. Yeah.
um, which is deeply scary. But I'm much more into it for fun.
There are people that want it for the nostalgia. That's awesome that you've been collecting this whole time.
Well, yeah, I mean that is it's I don't know. I feel strange when people try to like put things in a box or label things or like, analyze things or find the psychology in it of just like, because it's just, why wouldn't I still be interested in the things that sparked joy in my
Hmm.
childhood that do today? My first memory of trying to tape something off TV, and I didn't even know what it was for God, about 20 years before I pieced it together that we were trying to tape Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. I knew that it was Muppets, and I knew it was starting at bedtime. And so I just saw the very beginning. And I remember Kermit interacting with like reptiles or snakes or something, some other Muppets. And when I got up the next morning or came home from school, whatever the case was, and we pressed play on the tape, and it was static because it was this brand new VCR and we still really didn't understand how to use it. And that feeling of missing out perhaps is where it started. I don't know, but I've always had this fascination with um watching things and collecting things, and then cut to, sometime in 2003 or 2004 or 5 at a friend's house, and their roommate is watching Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and seeing that scene and just going, "Oh my god, this is it. I can't even believe that I'm looking at this right now." So I don't know. It's just there's a fun it's a treasure hunt every
Yeah.
VHS tape I put in. And like you mentioned, estate sales. I love going to estate sales because that's where you find the things that people taped off TV, but also um depending on when you go and who's running the estate sale, they're just looking to get rid of the stuff.
Yes. They don't want to throw it out themselves.
Right. And a lot of my collection, this is why I always tell people, I was like, just be honest about your interests and be vocal about it, because a lot of my collection is from people who either know me one-on-one, or in the comedy community, or listen to the wrestling podcast, We Watch Wrestling, and are like, I don't want to throw this out, but I just want it to have a good home, So a lot of these are donations to the Arena McSee archive,
Nice.
And I'm fine being the caretaker of this stuff, because it's like, I love it, and I love the idea of, the option of like looking through this stuff and being like, what is this?
Mhm.
I had somebody follow up with me recently on Instagram. They're like, hey, was there anything good on those tapes? And I'm like, I'll be totally honest. I know you sent me tapes, but I don't know which ones they are at this point anymore. They're
Yeah.
now mixed in with other tapes that I haven't gotten to.
Mhm.
Do you have a picture? By any chance, did you take a picture of the tapes before you sent them to me? And so I saw the picture, and I'm like, oh, good. They're in that drawer right here. I still haven't watched them yet, but I'm so excited to see what's on them. Trust me.
Yeah, well, exactly, and that was one of the videos I saw. Somebody said, "What's on video number 62?"
Right. I
And
mean,
that was one
basically,
video.
yeah, that's these drawers back here is what you're talking about. I have, these are like classic VHS tape drawers. There's 19 drawers in each one. Let's say 19 spots
Mhm.
for tapes,
Lots,
and
yeah.
then just doing the math of like, all right, well, this is tape number 1, this is tape number 300, this is tape number whatever. And most of them in there are things I haven't watched. And I have no other system of picking something randomly or going off of the label, or the really exciting thing is something with no label.
Yeah.
But when I fast forwarded in the VCR, the time registers, so it's like, well, there's something on here. I don't know. There's just something so fun and just relaxing about it, of
Yeah.
just, especially working in television now and working in a lot of commercials, just watching the production value of the commercials, or actors that we now recognize from something else,
Mhm.
doing commercials. Or even, like I said, like ads for made for TV movies. It's just like, doesn't feel like that happens very much anymore, despite the fact that there's so much content, like we're drowning in content. I could never keep up with
No.
everything that's being pumped out.
Every time you pop in a new VHS tape, it's like a treasure hunt. You just have no idea what you're gonna find.
Yeah, I was just watching a probably from 83. It's the ABC Sunday night movie, and it's the Blues Brothers, my favorite movie of all time, and movie I'm very familiar with. So in particular, seeing the edited for television version and hearing when suddenly, because this is it's one thing when they just drop the sound if somebody's saying, the
Mhm.
F word or whatnot, but those moments where they hire a voice actor to try and match,
Yeah.
so that they can add in new dialogue,
Mhm.
cleaner dialogue. And in particular, the scene where Jake and Elwood go to see Murph and the Magic Tones at the Holiday Inn, and Matt, no, it's Willie Too Big Hall. He's in the movie. He says, "You still got that money you owe us, MFer," and the voice that dubs over on top of it is hilarious. And then Donald Duck Dunn says something about like, you know, goat urine, but he
Mhm.
uses a stronger word for urine. And then
Yeah.
they cut over it on top of it. And the guy that does the voice for Donald, I need to post this on TikTok actually. It's
Yeah.
it's it's hilarious. The trying to sound like Donald Duck Dunn is like, we had a sound strong enough to turn gasoline into goat milk or whatever it is. It's just
Yeah. Yeah. I remember watching Die Hard 2 as a kid
Uh-huh.
on TV,
Yeah.
and instead of yippee-ki-yay motherfucker, he's Mr. Falco.
Mr. Falcon. That's so
Watching it,
cool.
my mom's a huge Die Hard fan, so I've
Yeah.
watched Die Hard 1 and 2 and 3 so many times, but then seeing it on TV and just going, "Wait, what? What did he just say?"
I still need to watch. I got my hands on a tape of when NBC showed Halloween for the first time.
Oh, really?
And there was so much cut out of it that John Carpenter, they were in the middle of shooting Halloween 2 at the time. And he actually shot scenes just for this televised edited airing of the first
Really?
Halloween that have been incorporated into it because they lost so much of the
They
runtime of the
needed
movie.
Yeah, they needed there was no way to, like, piece
They had to
together the
pad it with
story.
something, yeah. I even start thinking about it, I'm like, "Gosh, who was watching this at the time? Or what did this inspire? Or what did this,
Oh, yeah.
what was going on? Where was I?" I was like,
Mhm.
"Oh, this would have been around my 4th birthday. This is kinda cool." I f My
100%.
favorite thing is, I grew up in Rhode Island in the Southern New England area, and so the Boston station, TV 38, on the weekends, they would have the Movie Loft hosted by Dana Hersey. One of the things that they prided themselves on, this is a UHF station, they would show movies unedited with commercial breaks, but unedited. They would keep as much of the integrity of the film as they could. So, I mean, this is just turning channels to channel 38 on your dial. And like they showed, I used to have a tape of them when they showed the Terminator, the
Mhm.
first Terminator. Everything was in there. Like when the screen lights up when it's like, the Terminator's view and it says "fuck you, asshole"
Yeah,
in
yeah.
huge letters on just TV. I couldn't believe that as a kid. Also, even just the timing of it too, like Dana Hersey, the Terminator 2 hadn't come out yet, but
Mhm.
he's got material promoting it. And I remember the copy they gave him was wrong. Like it said, like, in the new Terminator coming up, there's going to be 2 Terminators, one to try to kill John Connor and the other to protect the Terminator and make sure he carries out his mission of murder. And it's like, that's not the plot at all. Like,
Oh,
who wrote that? Like,
yeah.
who got it's wild. I mean, this channel, they showed the Deer Hunter unedited on television on a Friday night in the Boston area. It's incredible. So I'm always looking for those. Any
Yeah, yeah.
copies of the Movie Loft is like, oh, this is the good stuff. And it's wild too, the experience of seeing a movie in its original form, having only known it from airings on television was like shocking. You're like, oh my gosh, this is what did they say? I remember my buddy Mike was just talking about this, like seeing Caddyshack for the first time unedited, and he was like, "Oh my god, this movie's wild," because he'd only ever seen it just rerun on a Saturday afternoon.
Yeah. Do you know how many pieces in your total collection you have?
It's there's probably like 7,000 different videos, between the mixed mediums. I mean, like with the laser disc, I haven't kept up on cataloging them as well. Because again, it's like they're so few and far between. I know what I have, and
Yeah.
even most of them, I really don't find them out in the wild. The majority of the laserdiscs I have is I have a friend who owns a record store, and they come in with used records because people don't know what they are, and
Mhm.
he can't sell them, and he's like, "Hey, you want these?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure. If there's something good, I'll hold on to it, and if there's something, that's hanging on by a thread, I have no problem taking it over to the Goodwill."
You're okay with getting rid of things here and there?
Definitely. As far as the movies go, it just depends. It is all case by case. I have gone through a bunch and been like, see what I can sell, see what I have no problem giving away. But I mean, it is a self-care activity. This is something that, and I have talked about, like when I, first met with my therapist, I was like, I just want to run a few things by you and make sure I'm not a hoarder because I see
Mhm.
that on TV. And she was very, she was like, "No, that's a real like illness. Like,
Yeah.
what, I you have a very large collection. Um, and she's like, and it sounds like it's a very important self-care activity. This is something that brings you joy. Um, I think it's something that people who don't participate in it, and this is one of the things I love about TikTok, is finding other movie collectors, people who get it. But
Yeah.
people who don't get it fill my head with the idea that there is something wrong, you
Yeah.
know? And
That's just the internet. There.
yeah, and just kinda going back to that idea of, like, that I talked about when we first started our conversation, of, like, putting it in a box and being like, "Oh, well, you must have some sort of trauma associated with this, and now, somebody in your life must have said, 'No, you can't have this VHS tape,' and now you've been trying to fill that hole the whole time." I don't I
It's not a hole. Like, it's stuff I
yeah,
enjoy. It can't be a
yeah,
hole.
I don't
I
feel
want
like
more I want more of the good stuff.
right. One of my goals in life is to be honest, and I wanna be honest with myself, and I wanna understand myself better and get to know myself better, and I can honestly, when I really, you know, admit to my innermost self, am I doing this to overcompensate for something? It doesn't feel that way. It
No.
truly feels like am enjoying these things and these tapes, and also there is something to just being able to look at it and see it,
Mhm.
and there is some sort of I've never been one of these guys to collect fine works of art, but there is something that I enjoy, like, looking at, and I feel at ease and comfortable, in this space, and I love keeping it organized. I just had a couple friends over the other day, and one guy had seen my collection, one guy hadn't, and my buddy Patrick's like, "Oh, you got to show him your office. You got to show him the tapes and stuff." And I was like, "Yeah, come on in. Love showing it to people." It's one of the things I've hated about the pandemic is the isolation, and this is not something I want to. It's not just for me. I want people here and, like, let's find something, or what is this? Oh, if you've never seen this, like, oh, we got to watch it right now, or at least talk about it. This is something to be shared. I'm like, oh, this is the action movies. These are Christmas movies. These are all Nicolas Cage movies. These three, cases are all pro wrestling. And the guy's like, wait, all of this is pro wrestling? I'm like, well, these here. And then he hits me with one of these impossible to answer questions, like, who's your favorite wrestler of all time?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, right now, today, in this moment, probably Roddy Piper. And I'm like, what about you? It's my favorite question to ask people, who's your favorite wrestler? And he goes, oh, Ultimate Warrior. And I'm like, oh, well. And I knew exactly where it was. And I pull out the Warrior DVDs. And I was like, well, we've got this one. We've got this one. We've got this one. And he's like, wow, you knew right where it was. And I'm like, yeah, well, yeah. This is not just, it's
Yeah.
not a pile of stuff that I am just, because you get that one sound on TikTok. A lot of, I think, ironically, people use it, but there's a sound people will use on their videos where it's just like, okay, bud, here you go in the collection. I'm
Yeah.
severely depressed. And I'm like,
Yeah.
that's funny, but I've never used that
Mhm.
sound because I
Yeah.
don't identify with that at all. Like, this is something it is very active, as much as it is stuff, and it's
Mhm.
things sitting on shelves.
You know what's in there, and
Right.
because you love it.
That's why, for the most part, I know what I have. Like, I keep a record of it, because when I am in a Goodwill, and it feels like, because there is that situation of, when I come back, this isn't going to be here,
Mhm.
and if I don't already have a copy of this, is it going to ruin my life? No. If I come home, I already had a copy of this movie. All right, so I'll sell it, or I'll bring it back to the Goodwill. I mean, I have no problem, you know, giving $2 to the Salvation Army.
Yeah.
I think there's
It's an
worse.
easy, yeah, the $2 is worth the easement of the mind.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And I know a lot of people, well, I don't know them, but I've become acquainted with a lot of people on TikTok who have big Blu-ray collections, and,
Mm.
like, the Blu-ray is definitely the smallest of the mediums I have, because they're the most expensive.
Yeah.
Because they're first run. There's a lot of boutique labels, but I do like supporting those places too. Like, Criterion's probably the biggest, but, like, your Shout Factories, or your Arrow, or Vinegar Syndrome, I think, is a great place doing great work.
And that's for people that don't know that they upscale the movies into Blu-ray?
Yeah, Vinegar Syndrome is a place in particular that they are preserving a lot of films, things that either were only released on VHS or, I mean, a recent example, and this is such a great story. Uh, there's a movie called New York Ninja, actually just ran on Turner Classic Movies the other Friday night. They kind of do, the Gonzo drive-in movie,
Mhm.
Joe Bob Briggs type thing on Friday nights. And this was a film that was abandoned, and they, Vinegar Syndrome, bought a company's, archive of
Mhm.
35 millimeter films. And one of them, literally, again, it almost got thrown out in the trash until someone asked the question, "What is this?" And they're like, "Oh, that's a movie that, you know, we don't even have the sound elements for it anymore. It's just the film. It's just the visuals of a ninja movie that they never finished filming it." And so they took it upon themselves to, take the raw footage of an unfinished film and finish it. And it's such a terrific, like, you just, it's something that will never, I can't imagine how many times this has happened, if ever. I mean, like, they hired um actors to do the voiceovers. They, the guy who put it together had to uh basically write a script based on the footage he was seeing. They put a score to it. They put, all the sound effects into it. Um, Curtis Spieler, if I'm saying his name right, this is the gentleman who works at Vinegar Syndrome and reconstructed the film. Originally, it was written and directed and starred John Liu, who I don't know if they've ever found him. They think he's still alive, but he's someone. This is the last movie he ever did. He did several martial arts films,
Mhm.
and just walked away from it. I think they ran out of money. This was something that, Troma was maybe going to release at some point and give them the financing to finish it, but it was one of these things where it was just like it got forgotten about, and literally, the sound elements are lost forever. The original script was lost forever. I mean, the credits of the film, it's like can only there's we don't know who to credit.
Yeah.
You know? So they got, Don the Dragon Wilson, to do voiceover. Basically, they reached out to a lot of people, that were, part of this, genre of these B movies and martial arts movies and, direct to video action movies. Cynthia, Rothrock is in it, Michael, Berryman, um and it's just such a great, and it's one of these things too, what it's not like What's Up Tiger Lily, where Woody Allen redubbed a movie and they did it for laughs. This movie's very, very funny because it's a ninja movie from the early 80s,
Yeah.
but they weren't they at no point were they attempting to make fun of the film. They really just completed this film to the best of their abilities. And it was also interesting too, like listening to Don the Dragon Wilson talk about, doing the voiceover acting. He's like, it's not, I've dubbed my own stuff and you have to loop dialogue. That's, but playing a different, not just a different character, but a different actor's performance. And he was like, there were things that John was doing in the film, which is not the way I would have played the scene. And it was this new experience for him to get to perform in a way that went against his instincts,
Mhm.
you know? And
It's like
it's
Face
just, yeah, exactly. So there's things like that. But by and large, a lot of the Vinegar Syndrome is movies that you may have seen at the video store and now the VHS tape because they never even got to DVD. Um, and now they are striking, new prints, the Blu-rays from the actual 35 millimeter film. Um, with as much care and respect as the Criterion Collection would do for, Fellini or Bergman. They're
Yeah.
doing it for, Champagne and Bullets and, Who Done It, and just these insane movies that have just as much value.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, and
Yeah.
like you said, them taking it and doing their best with it, like an
Right.
act with an honest effort,
Yeah.
that's when you get the best stuff.
Right. And then and really truly saving films that, would disappear otherwise.
That's so cool.
And also, this is the other interesting thing about VHS tapes is there was this idea, and albeit true, that eventually magnetic tape will lose its magnetism, and that's certainly true. The quality of tapes are not as crisp. The more you play them, the sound gets a little less, the picture gets a little less. Um, Particularly if like things are being paused a lot,
Mhm.
it's not that great for the tape. But it seemed like there was this idea that in 15 or even God forbid 20 years, all these tapes would just suddenly you'd wake up one day and they'd be blank. And that is not the case. In doing the research, I think 1990, maybe even 88, there was a New York Times article, and there was one engineer who was like, well, honestly, if we take care of, VHS tape, it could last up to 90 years. Um, and I understand like a lot of people, every so often you get some non-believer,
Mhm.
some commenter who has to, "Oh, I could have all of that on my laptop,
Yeah, yeah.
or like, oh yeah, it's all great until your VCR eats the tape." I have very rarely had the experience of a VCR chewing up a tape.
Mhm.
And it is from, you know, finding a VCR on the street, trying to clean it the best I can, and it's like, okay, this thing is just damaged. I think a lot of people's personal experience from not taking care of their stuff led to a lot of, oh, this tape is crap, or this tape doesn't work anymore, oh, VCRs are awful, or oh, they're going to chew up the tape, eat it. So I have the VCR I use right now, that is my preferred VCR, um, is probably from 1982, maybe
Really?
at the most recent date it could possibly be. It's
Wow.
this huge Zenith VCR, and because the fact of the matter is, the older the VCR is, uh, the better the piece of equipment it's going to
Mhm.
be. Because
Yeah.
once you get into like the VCRs they were making in the early 2000s, uh, cost less because they were cheaper,
Mhm.
and these were cheaper pieces of equipment, and also the videotapes that were coming out in the early 2000s are cheaper tapes. So the last major Hollywood movie ever released on VHS is A History of Violence, the David Cronenberg movie. That movie, and I'm not a conspiracy nut, but you put that tape in, the one I have, you put the tape in, uh, it has a 2.5 minute trailer for DVDs at the beginning. And then immediately when the movie starts, the tracking goes completely fucked.
They knew what they were doing.
Now, but there is something to like when I hold a tape in my hand, I don't even have to necessarily look at the reels, the spools of the tape to know how old it is because there's weight to it. The fact of the matter is too, you can rehab a VHS tape better than you can a DVD. You could buff out a scratch. I recommend the Magic Eraser, the Mr. Clean Magic Eraser, because they're abrasive.
Mhm.
So what you're doing is you're actually bringing uh like the surface down, it's smoothing the whole thing down and filling in as many of those cracks as you can. Plus, you can just clean, crap off of it as
Yeah, yeah.
well. But like once a disc, and this is very rare, but you get these random comments where they're like, "Well, what about disc rot?" And I'm like, that can happen, but I take care of my stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, I understand, like, you had your 30 CD case in your car all
Mhm.
winter, all summer, go through the car wash and like grab it, run out in the rain and stuff, and all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, the CDs suck. None of these CDs work." It's like you don't take care of your stuff. But I have there's a box over there of VHS tapes I bought from a guy at a heavy discount because there's mold on the tape, on the actual magnetic tape. But I have a VCR over here that I use specifically for cleaning the mold off the tape, and you can salvage these tapes. Magnetic tape is very durable.
Mhm.
You need to be gentle with it, but like you can clean that mold off with alcohol and then you're good to go. I've saved a lot of tapes doing that. And even if a tape breaks, you could, one of the earliest things I learned how to do, even like when I was still in high school, was like unscrewing the tape, pulling it out and like taping it and putting it back together and like
Yeah.
this works,
My first job was at AMC, and I was a projection. Well, I worked my way up to being a projectionist. That's all we did.
Oh
We
wow.
splice trailers and everything,
Yeah.
come in big reels, and we would literally we would look at the frames and go, "Yep," and you lose a few frames here and there. It's no big deal.
Right. Would you
Got
could
tape it up.
have a little crunch in the middle or have nothing at all,
Yeah,
you know?
it's fine.
That's
That's awesome.
awesome, man.
Are you actively searching for anything, or is it more just, "Hey, we're going to a garage sale. I'm gonna and we'll see if there's anything there."
No, I mean, it yes and no. I mean, ultimately, no, part of what's fun about this is I don't know what I'm gonna find, and that's truly part of the joy.
Yeah.
And even if I find a tape that there's nothing on it or it's, I'm not interested in it, I can still like there are people I know that make mixtapes or like are that's the other thing is people are always looking for tapes that they can tape over.
Mhm.
So I'm actually getting together a box for my friend. He's got a this kind of just small, just him boutique business. Like I know a couple of guys who do this, and they make these mixtapes. Maybe donate the money to charity or like just for the cost of making the tapes themselves. And I make a couple of donations. Like here's 5 or 6 tapes, and just take one and make me the new tape. Or like if there's some cool thing you just found, make me a copy of it. I just sent my one buddy a copy of Halloween 2 that aired on WLVI channel 56 in Boston, and a lot of the commercials. Like he's going to have a Halloween tape coming out soon, and he uses a lot of the local costume store commercials or M&M commercials or anything really.
Yeah.
But I don't know what I'm going to find, and that's the exciting thing. The specific white whale things are just random. Like if I could find a copy of, say, like TV 38, the movie loft with the Terminator, the airing that I used to have, that'd be cool. I mean, other things like I love collecting episodes of the Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson, actual airings as that aired, or random Saturday morning cartoons. I have friends who are like, "Oh, let me know if there's anything you want me to find. I can find anything." These guys who like download torrents, and I'm like, "Well, you can't find any episodes of Pandemonium because nobody watched that cartoon at the
Mhm.
time. These were cartoons on like CBS that were up against, like Smurfs or, some monster, and they came and went in one season. And maybe on YouTube there's like one episode in like German, or like there was like one episode that was ever released on VHS. I'm just like, but I saw these ads for these cartoons and comic books, at the time,
Mhm.
or, later collecting things. I'm like, I wonder what was that show all about? There was this show with these 3 pandas called Pandemonium. And I'm like, were they trying to escape from the zoo? Were they trying to get away from this guy? I'm like, what is this show? And it just doesn't exist. I'm sure there's sitting in some vault somewhere, some studio or at CBS or somewhere, somebody has, and they got no use for it.
Mhm.
There's no market for it. That's the other unfortunate thing is there's so much emphasis from the stations and the studios and the networks that new, we have to create new content. All the streamers, new, where it's like there's value in the old things that are just sitting there either rotting or vanishing or are lost. They're sitting. There's a 3-hour cut of the movie Planes, Trains, and Automobiles that
Really?
exists. John Hughes's first cut of that film was 3 hours long.
I would love to see that.
No kidding. Who wouldn't?
That
And
sounds
there are a few there are moments in the trailer for the film that aren't in the original, theatrical release. There is a script that the shooting script is around somewhere, and you can pick up on some of these pieces. Like there's a subplot where Steve Martin's wife thought that he was cheating on her.
Oh, really?
And if you watch the film back, there are moments that, this makes it, because the first time he calls her to say, I'm stuck in Wichita, she's in bed and she answers the phone. And then she sits up and she's like, I don't understand what Wichita has to do with you getting to Chicago. Then she sits forward and she goes, what's going on, Neil? There's that moment where you're like, why does it seem like she's pissed with him? It's there's this whole subplot that's gone that we don't even get. And that's why at the end of the film, she's so overcome with emotion when she finally meets John Candy's character and finds out that he's real. It's not this made up thing that she's thought that he's been lying to her this whole time. So there's stuff like that. Like that film is sitting in some vault at Paramount, and God forbid somebody try to find it. Oh, but that's the other thing. How would they even find it?
Yeah.
How much film is sitting there that is just forgotten and neglected?
It's the end of Indiana Jones,
Exactly. That's exactly what it is.
They just place it in there. You never find it.
Right. Man. So, I'm always interested in stuff like that, or my favorite cartoon on Saturday mornings was Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I have those. But my second favorite was the Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure, which all of those it was just, they did an anthology show of, Fantastic Four or Herculoids or Space Ghost. And all those things are available in and of themselves. Like it's just they were rerunning cartoons they did in the 60s and 70s. But the actual package of seeing the bumpers and the opening of Hanna-Barbera's World of Super Adventure, thrills, chills, I've never seen a full episode of that since it first aired. So I'm always interested in, perhaps someone out there has a copy of it, or, again, it's one of those things where I'm like, always be honest, always just say what you're interested in. Don't be ashamed of who you are and what you like. That's how I wanted to be a writer at WWE. I was just known as the guy in the stand-up scene in New York that was a huge wrestling fan. So when they started reaching out to comedy writers and TV writers, a lot of my friends were like, I don't want this job, but I know the guy who does,
That's so cool. I really appreciate you taking the time. And what's going on? What are you doing where people can find you?
Well, they can find me on the internet at McCarthy Redhead. I'm most active on TikTok and Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'll throw up some dumb thoughts here and there. But you can, if y'all like wrestling, I host the We Watch Wrestling podcast every Wednesday. We put up new issues. Mondays and Fridays, I usually do either or, one or the other. The Watch It with Matt and Glennis. That's a podcast I do with my beautiful and talented wife, Glennis. And we talk about TV and movies and TikTok and just things that we've been watching and pop culture in general. And, I got several stand-up albums that are available wherever people listen to digital music. You can stream it, you can download it, all that good stuff. And then how we roll. We just got canceled, but the season finale, which is now the series finale, is going to be on Thursday, May 19th, starting at 9 p.m. on CBS. Back-to-back episodes, and it seems like that's the last we'll see of it or hear of it. I don't know what the odds are of it being, if season 2 winds up being produced on a streamer or a different network. I'm not holding my breath, so this may be the end of it, and I very well may be the only man in the world with DVD copies of the show, because I've been taping it as we went along on my DVD recorder. I I only skipped one episode, and it's the only one that I'm not in. So the lost episode of How We Roll is out there as well. But again, just the idea of having a show that I'm on with the bumpers and the commercials and all that stuff, and it's just, you know, to have that little piece in the collection. That's actually right above my head is the Matt McCarthy collection. That's got the, you know, the season of Bored to Death I was on, and Curb, and the other guys, and The Music Never Stopped, all that good stuff. But yeah, you know, hit me up, check out my all my stuff, and you know, let me know what the good word is.
Perfect. Well, there's my cue. Thank you very much for coming on. And yeah, I'll definitely hit you up. And if I find anything, you'll be the first to know about it.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.